ครับ
โอเคโทษนะปิ่นไม่ได้เขียนบรรยายให้เนาะเดี๋ยวปิ่นส่งให้พี่ชนคนเดียวแล้วกัน
ได้
โอเค
ครับได้
สไลด์ส่งมาแล้ว
ครับ
รอแป๊บ
Okay, today we have a very honorable and very talented guest from UNDP นะครับ Dr. Anak Serechetapongse who is right now development economist of the United Nations Development Program. She's going to share with us her work uh, on the integrated national financial framework
framework
framework. And also, if you have any questions regarding working with international organizations, maybe at the end you can also discuss with Dr. Pin นะครับ so for the moment please give a round of applause and then give a floor to you ครับ Dr. Pin ขอเสียงตบมือหน่อยครับ
ค่ะขอบคุณมาก
okay
ค่ะthank you so much ค่ะอาจารย์ชน and thank you all for joining the session with me so as Professor Shon mentioned before I'm UNDP's development economist and so you might have wondering you might have been wondering why is it that this position come about in the UNDP so this is very much tied to the issue that I'm going to discuss with you today on financing. So before we go on, um, please raise. Are there any students online or are there students just on site?
right now
Let me know.
I think there are two of them online and
Oh, that's
the
great.
rest I think right now around 20 almost 20 students are here in the classroom ครับ
Um, that's great. Ha. So why don't we play a little game so that we're waking up a bit. So raise your hand, and for those who are online, please press the button like heart or like or whatever. Okay. So how many of you have heard of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs? Oh, oh, there's some. Oh, that's great. Uh, do you know which year is is the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal, in place in the world? Any guess? Any guess which year? For those of you online, you can type it. Oh, oh boy, there's no chat here. Sorry. Professor Sean, please don't answer. I know you have the very good answer. Ajahn Chon ka, the thing is that we cannot hear you
I
in the
think
classroom.
I
Yeah.
just closed the mic. I
Oh yeah.
apologize. Can you repeat the question so the student
Is
can
it
answer?
which year is the year that the SDGs were announced, first announced in the world?
Uh, 2016 2016
Actually, very close, but very good. Actually, it's 2015. Yes. So prior to the SDGs, we have what we call the Millennium Goals, Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, and then um, since 2015, it was replaced by the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal. And with that, let me share the screen with you. So, okay. Um, so, so you can see that, of course, the SDGs are very much wide, and it covers a lot of things. And actually, to clear out some misunderstanding, perhaps many of the organizations or the other national agencies have often cited the SDGs as the UN goal, as the goal of the United Nations. No, actually, it's not the case, because the SDGs are the goals that country leaders around the world have agreed upon, and the United Nations are there to support countries in achieving their sustainable development priorities. Of course, there are 17 goals here. All of them are important and, most importantly, are very much interlinked. It is something that many people have forgotten. In economics, when we study, for instance, um, and when some of the national policies, when they were formulated, um, they would think of the economic aspect as a separate aspect from social and environmental aspects. When in reality, um, these aspects are not separated at all. And I would say that um, they need to go hand in hand. They're complementary to each other. Is just think about this for a second. Say if the country is full of poor people, then what would happen? If the country is full of inequality, of injustice, what would happen is the lack of peace in the country, right? And it would make um, make it harder for the country to conserve the environment, right? Because some of the country's income uh, um, can be very much hinged upon the natural resources or the or the or or the inappropriate usage of that thereof. And what happens if the environment is damaged? Then uh, think about the floods. Many of you were quite young when the floods of 2011 happened, right? Um, or even the pandemic, the more recent example. Who are the people that are hit the most? The poor and the vulnerable, right? Because they have to, um, for instance, during the pandemic, they have to work from home, which when in fact they cannot work from home. The electricity bills are too high, and some of the jobs, say selling food on the street, there's no working from home for selling food on the street, right? So then, when the fact that they needed to get stuck at home, and the living expense of Bangkok, is quite expensive compared to other provinces, right? Then they needed to go back to their hometown. Some people might have lost their jobs and their income sources altogether. So when disasters, pandemics happen, it's the poor and the vulnerable people who are hit the hardest. Um, that worsens income inequality, and that you know after the pandemic, um, the economic outcome has been worsened too. So these economic, social, and environmental aspects are very much related, and there cannot be trade-offs between any of them. They need to go together. Going back to the financing, what happened? The question is, show me the money, right? Um, all of these goals need money to execute. Do we have enough money to achieve the sustainable development goals? The answer may surprise you. The answer is yes, we have enough resources in the world at the global level. However, the resources are not used in the manner that is most supportive to the SDGs. So, globally, the money that we have, the financial assets that we have, is um, 379 trillion US dollars. What happens is that for the high income countries, uh, they own like 80% of it, of course, and the middle and low income countries, they own the fraction of it. They've owned combined merely 20% of it. But what happened is that, are the resources used to support the SDGs? Have the money been transferred more fairly from the rich country to the poor country to support the sustainable development, um, to support equality promotion between countries? And are these resources invested properly to sustainability? So you can see that out of the, remember, out of the $379 trillion resources around the world, um, let's say 31 US dollar, 31 trillion US dollars were actually used in some way, shape, or form to support sustainability. So a fraction of what is there available in the world, right? And even that, and even the 31 trillion US dollars that are used for sustainability related causes, what happens is that only 10% only 10% of the 31 trillion US dollars are used for targeted investment opportunities and impact related to sustainability. And the 90% chunk, are used for managing risks of investments. So big resources, little used for actual investments that promote sustainability. And this needs to change. So that's uh, where each of the countries, each of the world leaders have come in the Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to discuss the money matter for development. And what what they agreed upon is that no country in the world would um, would be able to achieve the SDGs by the use of only government budget. Not even America, not even European countries, not even advanced economies, not even OECD countries. Because the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are so big, and the government budget alone would not cut it. So what they've agreed upon is the integrated framework to combine different resources, public finance, private finance, um, other sources possible. The name of the game is all hands on deck uh, to support development, and the same goes for financing side. And so the world leaders in Addis Ababa countries have agreed upon the integrated national financing framework, or the INFF, as a holistic framework to support the SDG achievements. So there are three values of the big framework. The first one is that this kind of framework would link the sustainable development strategy of the country, the national strategy, the national development plan of the country, to the financing policies and instruments. You all must have heard of the um, National Economic and Social Development Plan for the country, right? Have you heard of the financing plan for that national plan? Not yet. Not yet. And yes, this will change soon by this work that UNDP is supporting. And the second part of um, the value of the INFF is that it combines, it synergizes different tools, different financing instruments, public and private finance, as I mentioned, right? And here we talk about not just budget, but also the tax and non-tax policies, the issuance of public debt, issuance of government bonds and whatnot, as well as the issuance of the private bond, as well as steering the private investments towards the things that would support sustainable development, steering the FDI, steering steering foreign direct investment, and even portfolio investment, is and um, and using um, the international aid, the international funding sources to the most impactful use. And the other part that has been talked about in the international community is the insurance tools. That insurance are not just for car insurance, for house insurance, for health insurance of the people. It needs to play so much more role in development. This we'll discuss later. And the third one is that this platform, INFF, has the potential value of bringing people together, bringing government together with the private sector and civil society and the people to together find out what are the right tools to finance development. Now, the INFF that I talked about has been used in 86 countries around the world, and including Thailand as well. So going back to the point that I discussed before the beginning of the session, that why is it that I'm here? Why I'm here as an economist for the UN agencies like UNDP? And the answer is this. The answer is after the countries agreed upon um, establishing the INFF, UNDP also plays a role to make it happen. So what happened, for instance, in Asia Pacific region is that each of the country offices in UNDP, Thailand, China, um, Indonesia, the Philippines, you name it, in Asia Pacific, they were hiring economists. And I first joined UNDP in 2019, so right before COVID, to be so that economists of these country offices would then help in the execution of the working together with government and private sectors and different uh, different parts of the society to make it happen, to start to formulate the INFF that we discussed. So this might be something that you might consider after graduating from BE. Yeah. And now, of the 86 countries that are starting to apply the INFF framework, what are the international examples? So of course, um, the so of course countries are now thinking about development finance differently, and even Thailand. So when I talk to government sectors, what they voice is that they realize very well that the government money alone would not be enough to finance development, and therefore private sector money is needed. And when I talk to the private sector, what happens is that they said that they would like to invest, of course, in sustainability, but they would need more clarity from the government on what type of development that they support. So, so although of course it's a chicken and egg thing, but there's a point of convergence there. All sectors in the society realize that uh, all hands need to be on deck in terms of development finance. So, so in cases of other countries, um, they may have some flagship financing projects, financing initiatives, but there are also other tools coming into play in terms of financing. So Mongolia, the Mongolian UNDP has worked with the Stock Exchange of Mongolia to publish the reporting guidance to guide firms into investing more in development. But of course, that would need the regulators, such as the stock exchange, right, to ensure that the private sectors are really investing in the right thing and not investing in the wrong thing, but announce that it's for development. Cape Verde, um, I don't speak French, so I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. Yeah, Cape Verde is one of the first countries to have the blue economy sustainable financing platform. So of course, we talk about social bonds and we talk about public finance tools as well to push the blue economy forward. So so in the context of Cape Verde, um, uh, we have the they have nothing short of the existential crisis, right? The island economies, as the sea level rises, they are um, they are the ones who are threatened by the climate change. So then the conservation of the ocean, conservation of environment needs to go hand in hand with economic development, as I discussed. Yeah, so there are other countries, Uzbekistan social bonds, Bangladesh private investment in SDG priorities, Gabon green taxes and tax incentives to steer the private sector's action towards development, right? So these are some examples we can discuss later. Let's zoom in into Thailand. So why is it that Thailand also needs frameworks such as the INFF when the development of the country, Thailand is the middle income country, right? Um, why is it that we still need this type of framework? So in fact, if we look at the 17 SDGs, and the way to look at this graph is that if the blue line hits the 2023 mark, it means that the country is on track to achieve that goal in 2030 as um, um, as planned for the SDGs. Going backward means it's regressing, right? So out of all these goals, zero poverty is the only goal that Thailand is on track. And after COVID, the zero hunger goal in Thailand is regressing. Imagine Thailand, right? When we go into the streets, we see street food, but then there's people suffering from hunger. Yeah, even countries like us. And climate action, of course, has been pushed back to the back burner, and we see the effects of climate change even now. Um, Now with the hot and humidity and the risk of heat stroke, yeah, for example. And and there are some goals that are regressing and other goals are not on track at all. And the goals such as gender equality, promoting peace and justice, we don't even have enough data to properly assess where we stand. So a lot of things need to be fixed. Otherwise, Thailand would not achieve the goals in 2030. And many other countries in the world are facing the same issues. Many of the SDGs are off track, particularly after the pandemic. So it means that more efforts need to be ramped up to turn this around. Of course, you must have learned a lot about the the potential threats facing Thailand, right? We're talking about so recently the World Bank has revised down, right, our GDP forecast, and the OECD has recently um, showed the findings that Thailand's economic growth, GDP growth, has not yet to recovered. It has just barely recovered to the pre-pandemic level, while the peer countries, Indonesia and whatnot, have exceeded the pre-pandemic level. So, so our economy is very much fragile, and this comes with the household debt, 90% of GDP, second only to South Korea. But South Korea is much richer than Thailand, so you can see. And you must have learned a lot about the aging society. Actually, Thailand is not the aging society; it's the aged society. So the aging society part has manifested to a certain level. Um, of course, geopolitics, global geopolitics um, has been that has been challenging for countries like Thailand to navigate. And for the planet side, Thailand and the rest of the world are facing triple planetary crisis: pollution, climate change, and risk of biodiversity loss. So with more challenging future, of course, to turn the situation around um, and to stand a chance of achieving sustainable development, the integrated national financing framework, the framework like this is needed to put in the much needed resources, right? So once again, so this is the result of the consultations that UNDP has um, has executed, has conducted we're working with the Ministry of Finance, the NESDC, Sapapat, National Economic and Social Development Council, and other agencies, the Securities Exchange Commission, the Stock Exchange, the Bank of Thailand to a certain extent, the Budget Bureau to a certain extent, the Thai Bankers Association, and other parties, may it be through one-on-one consultations or through multi-stakeholders consultation. Actually, the INFF for Thailand has been launched in April last year in 2023 with the former finance minister, Kun Akom Termpitia Naka. So, so what is informing this financing framework is, of course, we take into consideration the pre-COVID financing needs and additional financing after COVID. It means that we need even larger chunk of fundings to fund sustainable development using not just budget policy alone, of course, but the revenue policy, debt management, and policies to induce and encourage private investments. Yeah. So with 5 thematic priorities, tackling climate and environmental issue, promoting equality and gender equality, and enhancing social protection, job protection, and creation in the face of the just transition, strengthening the health sector, and utilizing digital finance for sustainable development. And we're also working particularly on the insurance and risk finance side, so that the financing strategy, Thailand's INFF, would also be what we call risk informed, so that Thailand has additional tool to tackle different risks and threats, from disasters, pandemics, to other risks, so that the people, uh, of course, the planet, and most importantly, the people are very protected and are more or less um, that are more or less less susceptible to shocks. Yeah? And these would, of course, support not just the national strategy, the 20-year one, but the National Economic and Social Development Plan. So here we talked about the financing, right? Why is it that even countries like Thailand are facing the lack of sufficient financing resources? So in our study, UNDP has first conducted the study called Development Finance Assessment. And here are the results for Thailand. So before COVID, Thailand needs 1.7, no, 1.27 trillion baht per year worth of investment to achieve the SDGs. And after the pandemic, of course, the country would need more resources, both for recovery and to sustain the development momentum. So after the pandemic, going forward, there are 3 scenarios. In the base case scenario, Thailand would need 2.54 trillion baht per year of worth of investment for sustainable development. In the best case scenario, if the world economy is going better, if the elections of different countries do not result in something drastic, do not result in political turmoil, if things go better at the global background, Thailand would need 2.45 trillion baht per year worth of investment. But at the worst case, Thailand would need 2.68 trillion baht per year for investment. So, of course, this shows that all hands really need to be on deck, far beyond what the government can do alone. So, how does Thailand fare in terms of using the resources? And over the past 10 years, what happens is that Thailand very much relies on the domestic resources, and it does not utilize international resources as well as it should. And domestic, um, domestic private resources uh, were the main sources of financing for development. And then after COVID, then the public resources play a bit more role. And of course, as Thailand is the um, upper middle income country, the official development assistance or the ODA, uh, such as international grants and loans, play very limited role here. Um, 0.0, 0.05% of the total resources of the country. Yeah, so here the private resource accounts for 51% of the country, and public resource account for 48% of the country. So the questions here are twofold. You must have heard of, of the division of the pie, of the benefit, right? And here we need to do both increasing the size of the whole pie itself, increasing the size of the available resources itself, and better um, and a better slicing of the pie, better distribution of the resources to support development, cutting the pies to be more equitable. Yeah, Thailand needs both. Um, so, in the recommendations from our development finance assessments, actually, you can look more into it in the slides. These are the list of different tools that can and should and must be used for development, right? Um, that we will discuss as we go through the presentation. And as I said, the overall recommendations would be to mobilize finance to get more resources, spend better to make the better use of resources, effective risk management, of course, um, for the country to have the better plan, better preparation for unexpected events, and to support these all, improvement of the governance is needed. So first, on the mobilizing of financing, on getting more resources, um, what are we talking about? We talk about different things. We talk about improving tax administration and improving tax policy to be better aligned with sustainable development. I'll show you later how. Aligning not just the tax side, but also on the incentive side, incentivizing private investment from domestic sources and foreign sources to better promote sustainable development. Um, let um, let me go through these slides very quickly, and then I will go into detail soon. And ODA, the international aid, international uh, grants, or international resources that come directly for development causes. Um, although the money is limited, it can be used for strategic purposes. For instance, it should be used as seed money to catalyze investment in something that um, other investment sorts fail to go through, such as, say, kickstarting low carbon technology and decarbonization. um, in order for, you must have heard of, startups, what seed money is. It's used to develop, to get the project running before attracting other investment sources. And of course, accelerating the use of the carbon market. That I will not go into so much details, but here we're talking about other financing mechanism to steer the behavior of public and private sector towards the right direction, such as to reduce pollution and greenhouse gas emission. And we've talked a lot about private investment, right? Private investment needs to be on board, but how will the private sector know where to invest? So UNDP also did a separate study called the SDG Investor Map, which um, which gathered opinions and thoughts from different leaders in the business society about where Thailand's opportunities lie. Um, I will show you soon. So this would guide both public and private sector to form the right projects, right investment projects that are both viable and are both supportive to sustainable development. That will lead to the better better use better usage of tools such as green bond, sustainability linked bond, and bonds for development. Also, in other countries such as Cape Verde, we talked about blue bonds, right, to save the ocean. And the other tool that is up and coming is the transition bond, the bond used to for the transition going from um, high pollution technology to greener technology, for instance. And of course, the use of innovative financing, uh, crowdfunding. Thailand also has good examples on that, which I will show you. Uh, Now, let us talk about the tax for SDG. So, you must, uh, as students in the Faculty of Economics, you must have learned to some extent the tax policy, right? And we all know that the tax policy is not just about raising money; it's also about steering the behavior towards the right direction, um, nudging consumers, nudging investors to have a certain behavior that we want. So, so the more obvious example would be the environmental sector, right? For instance, systemic reforms of tax regime to reduce carbon emission, tax incentives for carbon trading and investment investment to reduce emission. So if we place more incentive so that the private sector would see that the benefit of investing in in green technology would outweigh the cost, then they would invest more in green technology, right? And another example that is quite obvious is the health tax. So if we put more tax on salty food, on sweets, which Thailand is doing now, on e-cigarettes, on on stuff that are unhealthy, then uh, if the prices of these things are more expensive, then it would incentivize people to use less of that stuff, right? And this is a good example because the proceeds, the money that is raised from the sin taxes, from the tax on unhealthy stuff such as salty food and sweets and whatnot, are used for health promotion. So the proceeds of these tax are used to finance the health foundation, the saw. You heard of it? Yeah. So that um, there are more funding to promote health, to promote the health and well-being of the people, to promote um, awareness on how to live more healthily. Uh, say, and other examples to be used are tax incentives for investment funds, R&D funds, mutual funds to support sustainable development. Um, so another thing, and the tax system alone would also need to be supported by another backbone, which I will talk about soon. Um, on the inequality side, of course, we talked a lot about addressing inequality. So you know very well that the inequality in Thailand stems largely from wealth inequality. So we're talking about um, ways to address that, revisiting the progressivity of tax, revisiting tax allowance that benefit the rich, exploring possibility or taxes on wealth. Is an uphill battle, of course, um, but um, but there are progress that needs to be made. So taxes on gender equality, taxes to promote gender equality. That's also important. You must have heard of the what is it? The pink tax, right? For instance, if the fact that we are born a woman, for instance, the fact that I was born a woman means that uh, I need to pay more tax compared to men. So of course, this is not um, something that promotes gender equality, right? So it means that gender inequality stems from the fact that you're a woman, you are put into a disadvantage compared to men. Um, for instance, you must have heard of this. 24 hours of people are they you people have 24 hours. The rich, the poor, everybody has the same 24 hours, so nobody should be put under disadvantage, right? Wrong, because women are put at a disadvantage. You see, Professor Shone may give a very good example. So men are working, right? But women, we're working as well. But what we have to do also, housework, raising kids, taking care of elderlies, right? These are the unpaid work that women are facing asymmetrically, unrecognized, and unappreciated. Sorry, Professor Stern. I'm sure you have. I'm sure you help your wife very well. I'm not talking to you. I'm speaking about I'm speaking about what the society can do, what the government can do to support women better. For instance, they can support incentives for companies to invest in the child care, elderly care facility um, that is needed to free up time for women so that women can pursue the opportunities that they choose. So these are different incentives that could be at play to support sustainable development. Next. Oh, okay. We're talking about other other examples of the tax, but very importantly, I want you to see this. Um, the so how do we ensure that the tax system and other system are placed uh, to be very much aligned with the SDGs? What we need is the tagging system. For instance, we need the right we need the right definition, right? For instance, we need the right definitions to know where the to know where the to know what is it uh, that defines what's the cutoff point, perhaps, that defines something that separates something that aligns with SDGs from something that are not. So this is where the definition needs to be clear. And for that, Thailand has already started on the taxonomy. Taxonomy provides such definition that I talked about. For instance, green taxonomy would define what is considered green and environmentally friendly, and what are considered as something that are not environmentally friendly. So these definitions need to be clear. The clearer the definition, the more measurable things are, the better you can track them and improve them, right? And this would very much link to the SDG coding and tagging, defining in the government budget what are the activities that are supportive to SDGs. Climate-related budget tagging is something that many countries have talked about. What are the definitions that of the activities that will improve climate adaptation and mitigation? Uh, so gender responsive budgeting that I talked about, there needs with gender responsive budgeting comes a set of definition on what are the activities that support the rights of women, that support gender equality. Yep. So we talk about the right definition so that we can better track the uses of the funding, may it be from the government side or the private side, and we can see the better results, and we can see where it is that we missed the mark so that we can improve later on. And from putting the right definition to tracking, next is to reporting, um, reporting the right activities. What is it that the public sector is doing right? What is it that the private sector is doing right? So let's say publishing tax expenditure should also be a part of the of the publishing of the budget to encourage debates among public sector, private sector, and the people regarding on how future concessions and tax exemption could be taxed and realigned to better support sustainable development. And the other part is on the SDG impact. So we have the definition, we track the activities, but how do we measure the impact of those policies on the SDGs? So of course we have the intention, but how do we ensure that the intention translates to the right impact? So that's where the UNDP's work on SDG impact measurement and management comes in, to ensure that the thing that we invest would actually yield positive impact on sustainable development. Here is what I talked about, the SDG investor map. There are actually from interviewing different private sectors and investors, there are 15 investment opportunity areas in Thailand that are both viable and are supportive to sustainable development. And 12 out of these 15 opportunities are related to environmental conservation and related to the transition towards clean energy, that are related to greening the development, making economic progress more environmental friendly. The opportunities we talk about: smart farming, precision farming, sustainable packaging, alternative food for the future, medical and wellness tourism, eco community-based tourism, waste management, and renewable energies, for instance. So then when the SDG aligned opportunities are identified, it would better guide both the public and private sector to formulate the right projects to attract investments. And here the usage of bond would be better tagged. So this is not the example of Thailand, but the example of Uruguay that UNDP is also supporting. The trend right now, we talked about the green bond, social bond. This new trend is called the sustainability linked bond. And what happens is this. The beauty of it in the case of Uruguay is the following. Uruguay is raising the sustainability linked bond to help reduce the greenhouse gas emission. And with this, there are two KPIs. First is reducing the gross GHG emission. And second is to maintain the area space of the native forest. And the beauty and the benefit of the government in issuing something like this is that if the government does well, if the country does well in reducing pollution and in maintaining the forest area, the two KPIs that they specified, the government can pay less money, can pay less coupon for investors. And investors would, on the side of the investors, they although they get less coupon, they want that as well, because they also invest not just for in business communities right now, they don't invest just for profit, but they also would like to see impact on development as promised. And if the impacts are there, then they're willing to receive less coupons. So it's a win-win for both sides. Yeah. And Thailand, as Prime Minister Sethar has mentioned, is exploring possibilities of issuing such sustainability-linked bond. Let's say I'll go very quickly here. So the tiger ecosystem bond is also another thing that Thailand is exploring. So because the have you been to like forest and whatnot? So the thing is that so in forest, I'm not an environmentalist, so I'll speak from what I know. So when we talk about the forest land prosperity, one of the main indicator is the number of tigers. So the more tigers we get, it means that the food in the forest has been replenished. Yeah. So because tiger is, the top of the food chain, right? If there's enough food, more tigers would come. Then it means that the forest land is so then the forest land has the biodiversities in the forest land is restored. Yeah. So that we've already talked about the spending better. And here, why is it that we need so much on the spending? Why we need so much on the taxonomy, on the definition? Because right now Thailand doesn't have one, and the budget has been released, right? We're producing the new numbers here, but without the tagging system, Thailand does not have good tools to measure if if its usage of budget, if its usage of financing resources are aligned with its sustainable development goals. So the resources are allocated for inequality reduction, um, a bit on human resources, a bit on public sector efficiency, so little on environment. Why is it like that? Is although the government promises that the environmental goal is important, that promise does not translate into better allocation of budget. So, of course, to give the benefit of the doubt, it could mean that um, the environment, the investment with environmental impact can be embedded in other in these other categories of activities. But to ensure that this is the case, we need the proper taxonomy. We need the proper budget tagging system. Yep. And still, Thailand, no SDG is mentioned, is explicitly mentioned in the national budget. So it means that if we want to really pursue the SDGs, the SDG budget tagging is needed. And the beauty of it lies in the Indonesian example. So Indonesian example has the climate budget tagging with a taxonomy in place, with a definition of what counts as some as activities that support climate change. And with the right definition, it would lead to two things. It would lead to better tracking, better usage of government budget, and also that same definition can be used to issue bonds. Indonesia has been quite successful in issuing the SDG bond and the green sukuk, the green Islamic bonds. So one definition, two usage for both public finance and for issuing bonds. So killing two birds with one stone here. Yes, and the other side, actually, several days ago, we just met with the Controller General's Department, กรมบัญชีกลางนะฮะ and before that, we just met with the Public Debt Management Office and the Tax and the Revenue Department สรรพากรนะฮะกับสำนักงานบริหารหนี้สาธารณะ Yeah, so on the public procurement side is something that is also overlooked, but there are interesting things that are going on here. In fact, Thailand is one of the first countries in ASEAN that works with the international organizations such as UNDP in public procurement reforms to improve the efficiency of the public procurement system and to improve the transparency. But what Thailand aims to work further on are different things. Are to leverage its already ongoing efforts on public procurement reforms to improve efficiency. The next step would be to link such efficiency with SDG progress. We're discussing green procurement, for example, how to make the government procurement system more supportive to green activities. So this means encouraging the government's purchase to purchase something that are more green, for example. And to promote equality, we're talking about encouraging the procurement system to support the SMEs. Yeah, so these are all the things that we are discussing with the Controller General's Department, and they're very receptive, very open to these ideas. Yeah. So we're talking about here we're talking about better spending, but we know what we spent, but we must know what we spend on, and we must know the impact of our spending to ensure that what we spent really aligns with what we intend. And on the reporting side, at the end of this, say in October of 2023, Thailand launched the SDG guidebook with the Securities Exchange Commission and UNDP. What happens is that, so you know that the listed companies, right? How many of you have invested in stocks here? Professor Shon ลงทุนไหมฮะ
did in some not really to stock but on some กองทุนนะครับ not on
some
stocks
funds, right? Mutual funds
yeah
and
some fun
whatnot.
yeah
Yes. So the listed companies need to submit what we call the one report to the Securities and Exchange Commission to entail what it is that they're doing that supports sustainability, that supports sustainable development. The SDG guidebook is one step above that. Yeah. With the as I mentioned before, with the impact measurement and management tools, then companies could have better ideas on how to manage and how to measure the activities better in terms of how does their investment, how does their internal operation is promoting sustainability, is promoting equality, is promoting environmental conservations. In the old days when Professor Shon and I were young, companies were, of course, we're still young, but let's say we're younger. Yeah. Yeah. Like say 20 years ago, companies talk about CSR, corporate social responsibilities. CSR is such an old term. And when we talk about CSR, we talk about companies growing trees, right? But then what? Then then can companies embark in activities that yield better results and outcome? The answer is yes. And companies also want to do that, but they want to know what it is. What is it? What are the better activities that they can do instead of just growing trees? And the IMM guideline, impact measurement and management tools that UNDP offers, would provide better guidance to these companies. And it is very much in their incentives to do so, because stock indices, Dow Jones, blah blah blah, and they have the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, or DJSI, that only companies whose sustainable whose contribution to sustainable development exceeds those of their peers can enter. For instance, in the banking industries, K-Bank got it because their results are above their peer in the banking industries, right? And I was before joining in UNDP, I was working at one of the banks itself, not K-Bank, of course, but in other banks. And banks and companies like these would like to have their names in the DJSI, in that global index. It means higher credibility of the company, higher recognition of the company in the eyes of investors. Yeah. So companies are now very much very much on the journey to improve their impact to sustainability, which needs to also be verified by third party to ensure that companies, they're not making something up, right? So these are so now the incentives, the willingness is there, and more actions need to happen. And the IMM, impact measurement and management guidance, would better guide companies on such actions. Here, we talked a lot about insurance, right? So you have car insurance. When your car crash, my insurance, luckily I have insurance when somebody hit my car. Yeah. And then we have health insurance, right? Because the health expense is more and more. Have you seen the breakdown of inflations in Thailand or inflations of other places in the world? Which item, uh, the price of which item is increasing the most, is increasing at the fastest rate? Healthcare. Yeah. So now Thailand would becoming more like developed countries, advanced economies where healthcare insurance is a must. Yeah. And but now when we look at the country, we see floods, we see big floods, we see disasters happening with higher impact, higher expense. Does government have insurance? Does the government even have insurance for its own assets? The answer is no. The governments don't have car insurance. Yeah, even their own cars, they don't have insurance. That's very strange. So previously, Professor Shon, have you used the car of Hamasat? No. Okay, because if you do, and when the car crashed, the government would just give the money for repair, and that's it. So what happens is that we refer to the higher risk of disasters, higher risk from the planet that we face, and it means that the damage could be even more, and the poor and the most vulnerable would be affected the hardest. Um, Imagine if there are floods, and what are destroyed? Roads, right? Schools, hospitals. These are the assets that poor people use, and without these, um, life has been much harder for the poor, right? And with higher risk and higher impact of these incidents, government budget alone will not be enough. So then the insurance and risk finance tools have to come into play. So I won't go into much details on that, but let me tell you that the insurance and risk finance is something that will be more mainstream in development finance, both for the public asset insurance and for the insurance in social protection. So social protection system, the welfare system, government budget alone will not do it, will not cut it. Um, as I explained, as much as the insurance, the health insurance is the must, um, insurance would also be a tool to support the social protection system later on. This is something that the international community is talking about. Yeah. Here, let's say in the Philippines, right? There's an example. Oh, sorry, not Philippines, Peru. Yeah. So the Peruvian Ministry of Education has set up a public asset insurance scheme to protect 50,000 public schools against natural disasters. So you see, the thing is that in insurance is better to have it and not use it than when you face something, then when you already face the damage and you wish you had it. Yeah. So the 2017 flood in Peru affected 14,000 schools, and so children, so especially poor children, they would have their access to education has been cut off. So reconstruction took up to 3 years, right? And but with insurance scheme, the insurance program for these public schools would help in transferring the risk so that the government would not have to bear the brunt alone when the damages happen. But the insurance company, so of course government pays premium before the damage, but after the damage, the insurance company would pay uh, for rebuilding of the schools, would pay for the damages that are inquired. And of course, it means that the insurance companies would bear the risk, would share the risk with the government, right? And then the disbursement of the money from the insurance company would be way faster than the budget disbursement from the government. So these are the benefits of the insurance schemes. Actually, um, for this, I also have multiple interesting examples of the financing for development, not just at national levels, but at subnational levels. So here, um, when we work with the governors, when we work with provincial authorities, provincial private sectors, provincial agencies, all of them point out three pain points here. The first one is that when we talk about the provincial government, the subnational government, their resources are limited. As when they think of resources, they think about first requesting budget to the central government. Actually, there are more options available for them to raise more fundings, from tax, from local tax to local financing instruments. And second is, after they raise the money, where can the money be used to yield higher impact on long-term sustainable development? How do we ensure that the money uh, that that has been raised would not be used to, just for the short-term relief? Of course, short-term relief is important, but long-term investment also needs to be made. Yep. And the other pain point is that they would like to learn more about what are the different financing instruments out there that they can play with. So sorry, this is in Thai. So recently, UNDP has worked with Krung Thai Bank on the Got Tao Better Together, raising funds to pay as salaries um, uh, for the people who lost their jobs, so that they have the new job during the COVID time to collect garbages along the beach. So we kill multiple birds with one stone. We give jobs to those who lost their jobs, and those jobs would be something to conserve the environment. Yeah, so the beneficiaries are the, say, taxi drivers, school, the boat drivers. I don't know what's it called in English. Boat drivers that they used to have jobs during COVID, but after COVID they lost their jobs. So then they would have the jobs that clean up the tourism space. And the Got Tao user charge fee. So if you are going to Got Tao, what happened is that you must pay 20 baht entry fee, and the 20 baht fee would then be, and the revenue from those fee would be used for waste management and for environmental conservation in Got Tao. Yeah. So these are different tools, and the pain point in using the government budget alone is this. You can see from Phuket, right? I'm not sure how many of you are from Phuket or have been to Phuket. You see the um, the tall the tall pillar is the budget request, and the dismal pillar is something that they receive from central government. What they request versus what they actually receive is incomparable. Yep. So it means that relying alone on the transfer from central governments would not cut it. And what can they do? Their potentials of raising their own revenues, say, big districts, Phuket municipality, Patong, can they're the ones who have the capability to raise more fundings than others. So it means that these municipal subnational authorities need more funding from other sources. Yeah. So what could the provinces do, right? Let's say it's a lot about, it all boils down to enhancing the subnational capability to know different tools, to know different instruments, uh, that to raise fundings, and to increase their capability to raise their own funding, charging their own fee, charging their own local taxes, and as I mentioned earlier, to increase their capabilities of these subnational authorities into using the the new money that is raised, um, for longer term development. We're talking about establishing green infrastructure, or social fund for the province or for the areas, and to increase their capabilities in linking the project with the long term vision of the province. For instance, for Phuket, they would like to have um, the new goals of New Phuket that are not reliant uh, only on the normal tourism. They want to, of course, they will still be doing the tourism, but their tourism needs to be changed to a better more environmentally friendly and higher value added model of tourism. So their vision, they're talking about clean and green Phuket, enhancing the human resources of Phuket, safe Phuket, world-class tourism. But what they're lacking are infrastructures, right? Roads, um, from roads to the mines, to the conventional center, to the health and wellness center, and the smaller scale entrepreneurs, their capacity would also need to be enhanced so that Phuket can level up to the higher value added tourism model of health tourism and green tourism, for instance. So, for instance, in the MICE sector, the meetings, incentives, they are the higher end of the tourism industry spectrum. And Phuket needs to have new infrastructure to actually transform its tourism model towards that. Yep. So these are some examples at subnational levels. And finally, to put it all together, financing at subnational levels. So how do we make sure that this is happening? So it means that the Ministry of Finance cannot work alone, the Sapapat cannot work alone, the Bank of Thailand cannot work alone. So it all hands on deck when it comes to money, and it also means all hands on deck when it comes to governance. So for instance, here, Thailand still does not have national SDG monitoring system in terms of financing. So what UNDP suggested is that Thailand should have what we call the INFF Working Committee to make this framework work. So Thailand already has the National Committee for Sustainable Development, but no subcommittee yet in terms of financing. So the INFF Work Committee could come into play to convene stakeholders, both private sector, public sector, and the civil society, different stakeholders, to together track the usage of money and to prioritize on the next steps of the usage of financing, to prioritize the different tools that Thailand can use. For instance, the Prime Minister is interested in sustainability linked bonds. Developing of that bond can be one of the flagship initiatives of Thailand. So different countries, as I showed earlier, have different flagship initiatives, right? But then these tools, to make it happen, to make it linked to other tools, tax, non-tax, as I mentioned, um, all stakeholders need to work together. The problem that we see is the ping pong game. You know what ping pong game is? Say when we talk to entity A, I would not name names here. When we talk to entity A uh, to do this, entity A say, I'm not responsible for that. Talk to entity B, and entity B said, oh, go back to talk to entity A. So without all stakeholders sitting together, nothing works. The ping pong game would continue, and nothing would actually happen. Yeah. So this INFF working committee should be convening, prioritizing different national priorities. Where is it that Thailand would immediately need more financing to form the flagship financing initiatives, and review and monitor the usage of financing, and improve the alignment of financing with sustainable development. So these are the directions that Thailand is moving towards. And yeah, I'll stop here. So any other questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, we have, actually, I do have several questions, but I think I can ask you later. We have some question from the student. The first one, I mean, in the chat that I have access to, the question is, I would like to ask that, are there major differences between the practice assurance standards and existing market conventions for issuing sustainability themed bonds? Yeah.
So so in a nutshell, we can only do as well as what we are given at hand. So in this case, it particularly means that what we can do is based on the available data that we have. And of course, uh, the in the global practice, there are these global principles, right? But when it comes to execution, it is very much hinges upon what countries are capable of, and most importantly, what data do different countries have. So we cannot compare the practice between European countries and Asian countries, as of course the nature of the businesses, nature of the country's context is different, and of course the data is, and of course the data at hand is different. So uh, so let's say, for instance, um, even in terms of the forest, see the forest in Western countries and forest in Thailand, in in Asia are different. So there are differences uh, between the KPIs that can be used, and KPI also means that how easy is it for the government to track the progress, and for private sector to understand the progress. So here I would say that there there are similar points and there are difference. The similar points, uh, the unifying points is that these practices are there to avoid greenwashing,
Hmm.
um, to avoid overpromising on development and under delivering on what actually happens, and worse, to avoid frauds, to avoid intentional uh, fraudulent activities. Um, but then even at the global level, even um, even at the global principle, it allows for the implementation to be tailored to the needs and the context of different countries. Thanks. I hope I answer your questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, everyone in class can still supply more questions in the chat. I do have a question as well. I wonder how I mean, how do we know if the INFF in Thailand is actually making progress? What kind of indicators are we using to monitor the progress of INFF initiative? And what was the response of the Sapapat when you proposed the governance for the INFF under the NCSD? Yeah, this is my
Uh,
group of questions. Yes.
uh, um, Many thanks, Professor Shonha, for the pertinent question. And my first question back to you is that will the meet will the recording of this meeting be shared externally?
No, 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 it's not
Just
gonna be
kidding.
shared externally. Yeah, only
Yes.
only
So
within this class. Yeah.
yes. Um, so personally, when I think about the progress of the initiatives such as the INFF, and of course, in principle, we want the financing strategy to be in place, putting every bits and pieces together in terms of what the government will do in terms of tax, non-tax, budget policy, blah blah blah. But in practice, as you can see in the examples that I showed uh, from other countries, um, the way that this INFF thing would progress is it will start from one or two flagship initiatives that needs to be progressed to the point of no return. that needs to be progressed, so that everybody, government, private sector, civil society, can see the value of the INFF, and then they would come into play to discuss, to track the progress. So, for instance, if, let's say, if the country, I will not name names here, if the country were to do say green bonds,
Mm.
yeah. So what happens is that let's say the green bonds, the frame, the not just the framework, the green bond, the actual instruments needs to be issued, and and after the issuance, it needs to be tracked on what the funds have been used, and and to and on the usage of these projects, what are the impacts. So on the government side, they can see the value that, oh, this INFF tool enables us to issue bonds to get more money. So so to get more money, to invest in something that they could not raise fund otherwise. That could be one of the value uh, that the government sees. And on the private sector front, um, on the private sector front, they can see that, oh, the INFF tool signals the government's stronger commitment towards sustainable development goals. This would incentivize them. This would give them more confidence to invest. So that's the value that the private sector see. And when the civil society, when the people see that, oh, with this INFF thing, there are more funding coming into the country, and there are more transparency on where the funds is used. So you see, this is an example where one initiative would enable different stakeholders to see the value of the platform, and this would lead to uh, wider adoption and wider usage of the platform. So the INFF could be a starting point for other, let's say, for other initiatives too. Let's say, in addition to issuing bonds, um, uh, it could be, so it could well, support the progress of the tax for SDGs. It could um, further advance the progress on the budget tagging, on on the on different tools and instruments that would fit with the country's context. And to answer your question on SAPAPAT, on the National Economic and Social Development Council, when we discussed with them, the point that they grabbed the interest is that, oh, it's great to get more money from private sector because the government has not enough money. Yes, and now the issue on the INFF working committee is that who will be the chair of the
Mm.
working committee. So that the ping pong ball game comes into play. Sapapat said that they're in charge of the sustainable development vision, but not the financing. The Ministry of Finance says that they're in charge of financing, but not sustainable development goals. So then the configuration would be, uh, where we're thinking right now is that the configuration would be that the Ministry of Finance and the NESDC should co-share these this INFF working committee to make it work.
Thank you very much for the answer. We can discuss about this a lot after the class.นะครับ. Actually, we have to. Oh, we have
Please.
several questions, but the time is already at 11:59. So maybe I pick one question that maybe we can answer. Um, okay, maybe I pick this one. So, why is the UNDP involved in the developing practice assurance standards for the SDG investments?
Why is UNDP involving
Involved, yeah.
that? Right. Yes. Of course. Very good question. And so, okay. Okay. You probably see earlier that there are the discussion on the ESG, right? Um, Evolving from the corporate governance, corporate social responsibility to ESG. Um, but still, uh, I would say the reason why UNDP has been involving in the assurance practice and whatnot are twofold. A on on the need for the private sector action to go beyond ESG and towards the broader SDGs. So actually, UNDP uh, has discussions with the Securities and Exchange Commission on going beyond ESG to SDGs because ESG is a bit more narrowed focus and as I mentioned earlier, the development goals, for instance, even the environmental side, uh, the effectiveness of the effectiveness um, of the private investment to ensure greater impact on development um, would go beyond growing trees. We when we talk about growing trees, we're not talking about just growing trees, growing forest. We're talking about um, um, working with local communities to ensure that the trees that were planted are the right trees that are um, that fit the context of that local areas, fit the soil land condition, and growing trees would then trigger the improvement in biodiversity in the area and would ensure that the local people have better livelihoods from those trees, have better livelihoods um, from the rejuvenation of the forest, so that the local communities would then have the incentives to conserve those areas, those forest areas that have been grown. These are the examples that the environmental, social, and governance side uh, would then need to link would then need to be linked to say gender equality, would then need to be linked to local community development, would then need to be linked to improvement of biodiversity in the area. There's so much more. That's why there's the need to move from ESG to SDG. That's one thing. And the other thing is that actually it is the request from the private actually it's the request from the private sector uh, and other entities to UNDP so that the assurance standard and whatnot are also aligned with the broader SDG agenda. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, we have some more questions, but due to the time limitation, I would if you have some time, I
Oh,
probably
please.
pose the questions to you, and if you can maybe briefly answer the question, and I will deliver the answers to the students again.
Yes,
So,
indeed.
thank you very much, Dr. Pin, for your talk today. I think this one actually have some extension from the previous presentation that you gave to my class, no, last
Oh,
year. So
indeed.
I thank you very much. I also receive a lot of knowledge from you and also a lot of questions. So I will just discuss with you
That's
after
great.
class, and perhaps we can, because I was thinking that how can economic professor get involved in this kind of initiative? Because eventually it is like economic issue. So if we have a chance to engage with the or with these issues, that could be kind of beneficial to the UNDP and the implementation of SDGs in general. And we can engage more ajans from here, from our faculty, to help with the implementation. So
Indeed,
please
that
give
is
a
more than welcome. Yeah.
yes, thank you. So please give a round of applause for Dr. Pin นะครับ I try to plan another camera so you can see the students. So thank you very much ครับ So
ขอบ
I'll
คุณ
see you
มาก
again
ค่
very soon.
ะ
Thank you very much ครับ
thank you ค่ะ bon appetit ค่ะทุกคน
ครั
ค่ะ
บ
สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ